Hey, I just finished reading this book, The Complete Turtle Trader, which which actually I've probably read over the years. It was originally released in 2007 as a hardback, so paperback, let's say 2009. I've probably read about 5 or 6 times, and it used to be one of my favorite books. And upon rereading, it is still one of my favorite books. Um, what this is the story of a guy called Richard Dennis. Richard Dennis was a guy from Chicago. Is a guy from Chicago who eventually, well, I say eventually, at an early age, went into trading commodities and other things, and became known as the Prince of the Pits. It was extremely successful. He started off with about $100 and turned it into about 250 million by the time he was in his 30s. Um, and he had a friend, Bill Eckhart, who believed that um, traders were made. Traders could not be taught. So between them, they decided to run an experiment where he selected, Richard Dennis selected a bunch of guys and girls and teach them to trade. Now, trading, you think of, you have to go to a top university, you have to be super smart, you have to be able to ingest and dissect reams and reams of information and all of this, and you have to know what all the news means, and you have to know news reports, crop reports, what people in the Fed or in the government are saying. Well, if that was the case, then how did Richard Dennis train a bunch of guys? Some of them had no experience whatsoever. Some of them were in their early 20s. Some of them were still in their teens, I believe, to trade within 2 weeks. He taught them for 2 weeks, and then he set them loose with zero supervision. And between them, that first experiment, they went on to make millions and millions and millions. In fact, some of them now are managing billions of dollars. So they actually went on and became super successful traders. So why was this one of my favorite books? This was one of my favorite books because I'd been introduced to trading by somebody, and it went quite well, and I loved it. Now reading this book, I realize I still love it, and I wish I'd never stopped. But the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago if you haven't planted a tree. All of that. It's a fascinating story about how this guy was so successful, and more importantly, he taught other people to be successful. Why is it fascinating? Because for anybody who wants to be successful, it's a way in. It's proof that there is a possibility to do it. And it wasn't just the people he taught that became super successful. There are what's called third generation turtles. Why the turtles? Because he called his class the turtles. And what kind of returns am I talking about? I mean, some of these people went on to earn, 100 million a year or something. 100 million a year. Amazing money. There's a guy called Jim Simmons, who I learned about through this book, who in 2007 made 1.5 billion. Massive money. And sure, money isn't everything, but it just shows you what's possible, and there's a way to do it. Recently, I looked up the author Michael Covell, and he's worth about 100 million now, apparently, because not just because he's a best-selling author, but because he trades his money. He's only been writing for less than 20 years, so it's a fascinating story. And I think the first few times I read this book, it excited me so much. It's only 214 pages. I read it in one sitting. I've read it a few times in one sitting. This time took about 2 sittings because we're on lockdown here in London, in the UK. I don't know anybody who's watching this video where you're based. Most of the world's in lockdown because of COVID-19. It took me a couple of days to read because I've got interruptions at home, children, which I didn't have 10 years ago when I was first reading this book. I can't actually communicate how fascinating I found this story. And right on cue, here's a child to interrupt. Now I have no idea how many edits there are in this video, so it might be jumpy. I might have to just record the whole thing again. Yeah, I mean, look, there are banks out there giving, well, now the interest rates are so low, there are banks out there giving hardly any interest. In fact, interest is usually lower than inflation, so you're losing your money by having it in a bank. But what if you could learn to trade? And it's in the back of this book, something which I found really fascinating, really mind-blowing, is the month-by-month performance of some of the people who were trained by Richard Dennis and his own performance. If I was to tell you that there was a trader out there who could make over 50% a year. It's amazing, right? There are guys in here, for example, who's this? This is Brian Proctor, so one of the Turtles. Brian Proctor, Turtle Performance. And in 1987, he made 185%. 185%. And that includes some big drawdowns. A drawdown is when you lose. So, this guy in 1 month was down 29.6%, but at the end of that year, he still came up 54% up. 54% on his money, or your money if he was managing your money. It's absolutely fascinating. It's like there's a world out there you think you'll never be able to understand, never be able to, even be aware of. I'd never heard of people making 100 million a year before, or 1.5 billion a year before. It's absolutely amazing, this story. I love this book. Certainly a book I'd give 10 out of 10. And the backstory to trying to reveal this story in the first place, the turtle story, the backstory to that, which is one of the appendices, is really great reading. It's just fantastic reading. I could actually probably go on about this book for years. Anyone who knows me will tell you if I've spoken about this, I have gone on about it for years, but it's absolutely brilliant. I would recommend it just as an interesting read for absolutely anybody, who's interested in trading or anything like that. An absolutely essential read. 10 out of 10, easily. I don't know what more to say because I'm trying to keep this brief, because I'm not one for sitting down and watching 10-15 minute videos, and I want these reviews to get across just the initial impact the book has made on me. And I think the best way to do that is, as soon as you've shut the book and finished reading, you do your review, and the book's just fallen on the floor. Never mind. It's not really an initial reading because I read it so many times, but I think it's fantastic. And the writer, Covell, has written a few books. They're generally called things like trend following. I mean, there was one of his books about this thick, and I think I read it in 2 days. I might read it again and review it, because I'm not one for ordering books during the lockdown. Just because I want to read a book, why should a delivery driver put themselves at risk by delivering a book to me? Hell, can I throw in that? I don't think Amazon gives a damn about any of their employees, so Amazon doesn't care. But I'm rereading old books that I've found. There's a few more on the bookshelf as well. Unfortunately, 90% of my books are not in my house. They're at my parents' house. But there you go. The Complete Turtle Trader. Let me just pick the book up by Michael Covell. Absolutely incredible. One of my favourite books of the last 10 years. The first few times I read this, I thought, God, I can never do something like that, because I was young and I still had sort of idol worship mentality. There aren't really any idols. People are really great at something because they have a bit of talent, they practice, and they keep going. They're tough. So, for example, if you know anything about musicians, a friend of mine and I recently got to go and see a guy called Paul Gilbert, who's a guitarist. 20 years ago, if I'd seen Paul Gilbert, I would have been totally starstruck, awestruck. Oh, wow! Whereas now I see him and I think he's just another regular guy, and he just happens to be really, really, really good at something. And that loss of the idol worship mentality is very useful, because it allows you to actually concentrate and focus and learn and appreciate the person for the person and the hard work they put in. Getting off track. I'll leave you with that. Definitely read it.